Battle of Saratoga, brought to you by Sam Ward. By 1777, the American Revolution was in full swing and the British seemed unstoppable. British General John Burgoyne had come up with a nifty plan to finally defeat the American colonies. This plan would consist of long marches to set up the British forces and break the colonies down from the inside. To Burgoyne, it seemed foolproof, but with the help of many colonists, ranging from farmers to blacksmiths, the people of America weren't going to go down without a fight, and the success of America in the Battle of Saratoga was the turning point of the nation from a time of tragedy to a time of triumph. The Revolutionary War was won by the United States because of this one crucial battle. You may be wondering why this war broke out in the first place, so let's rewind to around 1765, when the British began using their power to tax the colonies. Britain's first intolerable act was the Stamp Act of 1765. This basically required that printed material in the colonies must be printed on stamped paper from London. Soon after, in 1773, Britain saw how important tea was to the Americans, so they taxed any tea brought into the colonies. This was known as the Tea Act. They also monopolized the industry by making the British East India Tea Company the only place the Americans could buy tea. At the same time, they raised the prices of this tea very high, which upset the Americans. This frustration from the Americans eventually led to the famous Boston Tea Party, where a group of patriots boarded a British ship and threw barrels of tea over the edge. This was a tragic time for the colonists because the reason they left in the first place was for their freedom and independence, two things that they are kept from having with these acts. Colonial resistance to these acts eventually led to Parliament passing a series of acts to bring control over Massachusetts. Now that you see the tension between the colonies and Britain, it is clear why the colonies wanted their freedom, and there is only one way to do so. They needed to go to war with Britain. Great Britain's plan was to send nearly 8,000 troops down into New England from Canada. Burgoyne would lead one group down along Lake Champlain and into Fort Ticonderoga. At the same time, another British general named Barry St. Leger would lead his troops south from Ontario. During Burgoyne's trek south through the dense forests of New England, the patriots of the American colonies made the march for the British very difficult. They used their ability to see the bright red jackets of the British soldiers and a thick brush to sneak up on marching soldiers. Because the British soldiers had strict orders, when the Minutemen shot at them, there was nothing they could do. Although the British won the first battle in Fort Ticonderoga, they were slowed down by the Minutemen so much that they needed to get more supplies before continuing southward. When word reached them that there was a lightly guarded supply depot in Vermont, General Burgoyne sent troops to bring him back whatever they could take. From this point on, preparation for the colonists was beneficial in turning around the Revolution. Little did the British know heading to Vermont, for the Americans, the British delays and defeats had bought them enough time to reorganize and reinforce their army. When Burgoyne's troops arrived in Bennington, Vermont, they were met by American General John Stark, who then surrounded the British troops. The Americans captured around 500 troops that day, and it is remembered as the completest victory of the war. This loss in Bennington set back Burgoyne even more, and every day he waited, in part in the vain hope that General Henry Clinton would arrive with a relief force from New York City. More revolutionary troops arrived on the scene. During this sneak attack and more delay from the British Army, a new commander, Horatio Gates, was able to station his army along the Hudson River. With fortifications on the floodplain and cannons on the heights, the position dominated all movement through the river valley. General Burgoyne tried to find a way around the American strong fortification, but it was nearly impossible without retreating far back north. Also, Burgoyne's army was entirely dependent upon the river to haul their supplies, and the American defenses were unavoidable and a dangerous obstacle. Once the British began their retreat back to safety near Albany, New York, the Americans stopped defending their land and started attacking the British. The British Army believed that they would be safe if they marched back north, but they underestimated the severity of the conditions they were traveling through. The colonists knew the land, and this gave them a strong advantage. Hampered by bad roads and made worse by frigid downpours, the British retreat made only 8 miles in 2 days to a small hamlet called Saratoga. The Americans' tactic at this point was to continue pursuing the British Army and keep chipping away at their numbers. There were definitely some questionable decisions by British commanders that could have changed the outcome of the war and helped Britain in a positive way. General Burgoyne was very hesitant on making decisions for his army, and it turned out to be costly. With the revolutionaries hovering on Burgoyne's right, he retreated to Saratoga in the vain hope that either Clinton would arrive or that he could continue to retreat to Fort Ticonderoga. His hesitation cost him his army. Slowly, as the colonists gained momentum against the British, more and more people felt confident and passionate about their independence. This patriotism and willingness to fight became overwhelming for the British. Nearby settlers were inspired by the Bennington victory to take down their old hunting rifles and join the Patriot cause. Although the British had the largest and most powerful army in the world, the colonists were fighting for more than just their lives. They were fighting for their freedom. With the number of British troops falling, there was nothing General Burgoyne could do but to surrender his entire force on October 17, 1777. The Americans had turned the American Revolution around against all odds and were on their way to great triumph and the independence they desired. Initially, General Gates had set harsh terms for the British if they were going to surrender, but he eventually made it more fair. The agreement between Great Britain and the United States was that the British Army had to march to Boston, where a ship would be waiting for them. They were allowed to return to Great Britain on the promise that these soldiers would never again fight in North America in the war. Making this agreement gave the United States the confidence in themselves that they needed, and they were finally made a free country. Of equal importance, the success at Saratoga gave France the confidence in the American cause to enter the war as an American ally. This was very critical because France would go on to help the United States in foreign affairs for a long time after the Revolutionary War. They are still one of our allies to this day. So in case you missed anything, here's a quick review. In the mid-1700s, the American colonies were not running very smoothly. Once they did start to figure things out, Great Britain noticed this and didn't want to lose control over them and let them get too powerful. By using policies and tactics such as the Intolerable Acts, they made it harder and less convenient for the Americans to live their everyday life and prosper as a nation. This oppression upset the colonists enough that they were willing to go to war with the most powerful military in the world, even though they didn't have enough guns to arm every soldier. Throughout the Revolution, America struggled. Although they knew the land and were passionate about fighting for their freedom, they were heavily outnumbered and less skilled than the British soldiers. But they continued to fight and wait for their opportunities. With great leadership from General Gates and General Arnold, the American victory at Saratoga was a major turning point in the war for independence, heartening the supporters of independence. The victory at Saratoga gave the Americans the momentum they needed to keep pestering and chipping away at the monster of a British army it was. It really makes you wonder how the United States would be doing at this point in time if the colonists had not been so triumphant in the Battle of Saratoga. What if they had not defeated the British in Bennington and the British soldiers got the supplies they needed? What if General Gates hadn't set up such a powerful defense along the Hudson River? Overall, the success of America in the Battle of Saratoga was the turning point of the Revolutionary War and turned the nation from a time of tragedy to a time of triumph.